Monsieur le Président, les interprètes nous disent que c'est inaudible parce que votre micro n'était pas ouvert.
Chair, we're getting that it's inaudible because your microphone is not on.
Oh, sorry. Merci, Madame Chabot.
Thank you, Ms. Chabot.
We'll start from the top. The clerk has advised me that we have a quorum. That being so, I will call meeting number 36 of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills, and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities to order. Today's meeting is taking place again in a hybrid format, according to House Order of June 23rd, 2022. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to make a few comments for the benefits of the witnesses and members. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. For those participating virtually, please use the raised hand function. Before speaking, click on your mic to activate the microphone. Those in the room, the microphone will be activated in the room. You may speak in the official language of your choice. For those of you participating virtually and in the room, if you detect a loss of interpretation services, please get my attention. The meeting will be suspended until the issue is resolved. I'd like to also remind members participating that no screenshots are allowed of the committee proceedings. Should any technical challenges arise, again, advise me and we will suspend to correct them. Currently, the committee is studying a Black Canadian Communities Initiative pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, February 3rd, 2022. I would like to welcome our witnesses to begin our discussion. Before I do that, I want to acknowledge we have two substituting members from the official opposition. Welcome to the committee. I believe that's the only changes. And at this time, I would like to introduce Karen Hall, Assistant Deputy Minister, Income Security and Social Development Branch. Katie Alexander, Director General, Program and Operations Branch. Sandra Charles, Director, Supporting Black Communities Initiative. We will start, I didn't get this correction, is one statement being made or is all three making? It's just one?
One statement, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Then Ms. Hall, you will begin with 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, just Ms. Hall, before we begin, I want to acknowledge the regular clerk of the committee is not with us. We have a substituting clerk, and I'd ask her to introduce herself to the committee.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Hello, everyone.
My name is Dansa Lavoie, and I'm subbing in for Danielle. Thank you for having me.
All right, Ms. Hall, you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here today. It's lovely to be here in person with you. As the Chair noted, my name is Karen Hall. I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister of the Income Security and Social Development Branch at Employment and Social Development Canada. And I'm joined by Katie Alexander, who's the Director General in the Program Operations Branch, and Sandra Charles, who's the Director for the Supporting Black Canadian Communities Initiative.
So first and foremost, I'd like to provide you with some context and an overview of the Supporting Black Canadian Communities Initiative. Anti-Black racism impacts the lives of millions of Black people in Canada every day. It creates significant inequities and barriers that prevent the full inclusion of Black communities in all areas of life. We also know that the COVID-19 pandemic has had disproportionate impacts on Black communities, heightening existing inequities faced by these communities.
Canada's Black population is among the fastest growing and continues to make significant contributions to Canadian society with the potential for an even greater impact into the future. In response, and as part of Canada's recognition of the United Nations Decade for People of African Descent, in Budget 2019, the government provided $25 million over 5 years to establish the Supporting Black Canadian Communities Initiative. In Budget 2021, an additional $100 million was provided for SBCCI to address systemic inequalities and support capacity building. And finally, Budget 2022 provided an additional $50 million over 2 years for the continued empowerment of Black-led and Black-serving community organizations and their work in promoting inclusiveness. In that budget, the government also stated its intention to explore further options to continue supporting capacity building within Black-led and Black-serving community organizations in the long term. The SBCCI is key in meeting Canada's commitments to the UN Decade of People of African Descent. The SBCCI's implementation is informed and led by the voices of Canada's Black communities, aligning to the principle of by us, for us. This principle was emphasized at the National Black Canadian Summit in Halifax this past July, which I was very pleased to be able to attend. The SBCCI operates under 3 pillars. The first pillar, capacity building, strengthens foundational infrastructure and sustainability for more evidence-based decision-making and to foster more enduring supports within communities. The second pillar, systems change, supports projects and initiatives that address the systemic barriers and inequities faced by Black Canadians. And the third pillar, emerging priorities, is to address emerging gaps and priorities as identified by Black community stakeholders and other community of practice networks. So I'll speak about these in turn, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure how I'm doing for time.
2.5 minutes.
Okay,
left.
thank you. On the first pillar, capacity building, within the SBCCI, we work with communities to support a sustainable ecosystem of Black-led and Black-serving organizations. Comme vous avez...
As you heard on Monday, to ensure community voices are centered, funding is provided to high-capacity Black-led organizations who act as national funders, and who in turn provide funding for capacity building to smaller Black-led community-based organizations.
Funders, as you've heard, are Tropicana Community Services in Toronto, the Black Business Initiative in Halifax, Group 3737 in Montreal, and Africa Centre in Edmonton. To date, the national funders have together awarded over $25.7 million to more than 705 Black-led and Black-serving grassroots organizations across Canada, helping to build community-based capacity. The SBCCI has also invested directly in more than 1,370 projects under the capital assistance stream of the initiative, which is administered by ESDC. A total of almost $82 million was invested to help organizations in more effectively delivering programs and services to the communities they serve. Now, turning to the second pillar, systems change, there are a couple of elements there that are designed to support the projects and initiatives to address systemic barriers. And so one of those is the External Reference Group, which was a commitment that the government has made and is in train, as well as the National Institute for People of African Descent, for which a call for proposals was launched. And again, selection process is underway and in train. Under emerging priorities, there's a range of initiatives that have taken place, including one place where I was able to visit this summer, which is in just outside Halifax, the former Nova Scotia Home for Coloured Children, which has been returned to the community, and the project has funded significant renovations to turn that space into a community hub for the Black community in Nova Scotia. All right, and so I will wrap up. The last thing I would note is a complementary initiative, which I think you heard a little bit about earlier this week as well. the Black-led Philanthropic Endowment Fund, which sits alongside the Supporting Black Canadian Communities Initiative and is designed to build capacity and put funding in the hands of Black-led and Black-serving organizations into the future. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and happy to take your questions. Merci.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. I will now open the floor to questions, and I would ask those questioners to identify who they're directing their question to, or if it's to everybody. We'll begin with Mr. Dalton for 6 minutes. Mr. Dalton?
Yeah, thank you for sharing the information, Ms. Hall. Just wondering, as far as effectiveness, measuring the effectiveness of supporting a Black Canadian Communities Initiative, can you tell you how you do that?
Thank you for the question. Absolutely. So as part of the initiative, as with any program, the results framework is a key portion of the program and the measurement of the results. And so there's a set of outcomes that we're seeking, immediate, like short-term, medium-term, and long-term. And so I'm actually going to turn to Sandra to give us a high-level overview of what those indicators are.
Thank you. So as Karen was mentioning, one of the tools that we use to measure effectiveness is indeed the performance result framework. So, for example, what we're seeking to achieve through the SBCCIs is really the social inclusion of Black communities, in particular the most vulnerable. So in order to measure that, we have identified immediate, intermediate outcome along the theory of change, making sure that we're achieving the result that we're seeking, that will help us identify the efficiency of our initiative. What we have used also is our engagement with the community. So as you heard from other witnesses this week, we are working very closely with the community. We have an opportunity to hear from them. I myself personally, I was able to attend the Congress of Groupe 3737 and be able to interact and hear from the community. Thank you.
So I'm hearing that you're meeting the objectives. Is the fund, is the program meeting all the objectives that you've laid out? Karen, Ms. Hill, I'll let you kind of direct how you want the questions to be answered.
Thank you. I'll turn to Sandra for that one.
I wouldn't say meeting all objective, but definitely on track. SBCCI is in operation for 3 years, so we're currently collecting, right, the result and learning more. So, yes, we're on track of meeting our objective, but certainly still work to do.
Could you maybe share what the administrative costs are to the program? If it is obviously the less administration and more gets actually into the field is really important. So can you maybe talk about that?
Thank you for the question. I'll turn to Katie for that in just a moment. I would underline the unique or more innovative model that we're using for this program, which I think you heard a bit about earlier in the week in terms of using the intermediary model. So there's a portion of the program that's delivered by ESDC through our program operations branch, and that was the capital assistance project, so the 1,370 grants that were issued. And then we're also using the intermediary model in order to have decision making on the grants for the community-based capacity stream, really situated in communities and with the voices of the Black community. And so together, those two models provide, I think, an effective blend of the standard model and the approaches through the more innovative approach. Katie, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yep.
I'd be happy to. Thank you for the question. I would maybe just touch on administrative costs. The way that we set up our grants and contributions agreement is there's up to approximately 15% that is allowable for the organization to administer the funds that we have been afforded or that have been afforded to them. So that would cover things like the cost of staffing for their own organization to be able to administer the Gs and Cs and the funding that they've been provided, to be able to work with community members to do the outreach necessary to invest the funds that they've been given. So it's typically up to 15%.
Great. How long does it take for organizations, once they've been approved, to get the funding? Like, what's the time frame?
Just to clarify, Mr. Chair, so like from the time of application or from the time of the decision, how long does it take for the
Yeah,
funding to
from
be
just
received?
the whole process, from the time of applying or from the cutoff time, and then for the approval, how that works.
Sure, thank you. So I'll turn to Katie for that. Again, just because we have these two different approaches, maybe we'll speak to both if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So typically, an open call for proposal process is what we call it in the department, is when we post the notification of a call for proposal on our website. It takes approximately 6 to 8 months for that project to actually be signed and realized in the community. And that's in large part providing applicants enough time to prepare themselves to apply for the process, as well as in the department to take the necessary time to review the applications, to do the assessment necessary, to then make recommendations. Once a recommendation is made, we then work with the applicant or the successful recipient to then finalize the terms of the agreement before we can then flow the funds to them.
So you mentioned that there's been 705 grants that have been approved, I'm correct. What is the amount, the average amount given for a grant, and kind of what is the range?
Sure. So I can tell you that the average is $36,000. Now the range, I may have to turn to Sandra to see if she has that right at her fingertips. If not, we'd be happy to come back to the committee in writing.
Answer?
Oui, excusez-moi.
If you would then just submit it to the committee in writing, then
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Dalton will receive it. That concludes first. We'll now move to Mr. Coteau for 6 minutes, please. Mr. Coteau, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Complications of these headphones. I just wanted to say thank you to the officials joining us today. I know that this program, from what we've heard from our past witnesses, from recipients and the folks involved in the administration of the funding, that this is an innovative, first of its kind type of program in Canada. And I know that many of the organizations in communities like mine in Toronto, but across the country, know that this program is making a huge difference in their community, especially because some of them, this is the first time they've had a relationship with a funding relationship with the federal government. So maybe, Ms. Hall, you can tell me, of the 705 recipients, how many of them would be first-time recipients of federal funding?
Thank you for the question. I don't have an exact number at my fingertips, but what I can tell you today is the number would be very large. So these are organizations that are small, that have not generally had previous investments, and that require additional assistance in terms of building their own organizational capacity in order to be considered for larger grants or other grants. And so the funding is going to things like, equipment, facilities, board planning, strategic planning, helping hire new staff to be like full-time staff so that it's not only volunteers. The sorts of efforts that then allow an organization to be in the running for larger grants and contributions or to leverage funding from other organizations into the future.
We heard from Alika Hall, who is the executive director of the NIA Center. I think it was 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, and she said that foundations across the country, for every $100 they spend, about 7 cents goes to Black-led organizations. Do you think that the investments we're making today will better position the 705 recipients to compete in alternative space outside of government in the future by building capacity to seek funds from foundations, organizations like the YMCA and the United Way, etc.?
So, Mr. Chair, I would say yes. The funding is going to make a difference and better equip organizations to be in the running for additional funding opportunities. We took note of Ms. Hall's testimony last week or week before, and would underline her point that the funding, the investment is necessary in order to have the capacity to be able to then be part of larger granting contribution programs. I would say too.
Go ahead.
The launch of the call for proposals for the Black-led Philanthropic Endowment Fund earlier this week also presents another source of funding and another stream of investment for Black-led organizations. So this will be a $200 million fund that will go as an endowment to a Black-led and Black-serving organization that will function as a foundation and in turn grant to other organizations. And in doing so, it will provide a stable and permanent source of funding for Black-led and Black-serving organizations in the community that will, again, help to shift some of those numbers that we saw, for example, in the unfunded report, which you cited.
I know that as more organizations start to build capacity, of course, more competition builds as well, and more expertise, more service delivery. Sometimes, maybe, and this is way into the future, but there may be some overlap in the future by building more and more capacity. Have you explored any future methods or programs to analyze the work organizations are doing, like, for example, a collective impact model or any type of specific models that will help better position the government to amplify things that are working and to downsize things that may not be working? Is there anything in the forefront? And I know I'm going way into the future, but anything that the department's thinking of?
Thank you for the question. And so collective impact models are models that are used in other programming within the department. I would say in terms of the SBCCI initiative, in Budget 2022, the government did signal its interest and intention. It's thinking about the future of the program. And I would say, as the development or the work continues in that regard, different models may be an option, including collective impact, but more to come.
Final question. Oh, do I have time, Mr. Chair?
No, you do not, Mr. Coteau. That concludes your 6 minutes.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Madame Chabot, à vous.
Over to you. Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the three of you for your testimony. First and foremost, this is our second meeting with witnesses. We haven't heard from a ton of witnesses, but we had heard from some of the intermediary groups. So first and foremost, I will say that I fully support this initiative in terms of objectives. The objectives are a good one. 2 are more qualitative. I'm talking about inequity and capacity building. Now, I do have some questions about how we could measure how the aid distributed by ESDC and the intermediary groups. Well, how can we measure whether these sums of money, which seem large but are spread throughout the entire country, you could see how that would make it seem like less money. I'm not saying we need to add more money, but how could we measure whether we are actually meeting our objectives? Some objectives are more specific, other objectives are more general. Thinking of inequities, thinking of capacity building. Some objectives are more difficult to measure than others, so how can we measure progress towards objectives? I'm going to pass that over to Sandra. Thank you. Thank you for the question. First and foremost, the tools that we have developed are tools that we have developed in collaboration with the intermediaries. There are assessment plans, assessment strategies. At the same time, we are working collaboratively on capacity building in terms of data collection. Of course, data collection is an important issue. One solution to really measure the impact of our initiatives is by collecting more data on the impacts. Another tool that we use is conversations. A lot of changes are qualitative, things like a feeling of belonging. So it's really by talking with people, having discussions with them, and then also collecting statistical data. Thank you. My second question is about equity in how the funds are being distributed. Now, within the Black community, people are not spread evenly throughout the country. They might be more present in one province or another. Is there an equity between Quebec and the other provinces? Is there representativeness in how the funds are distributed to the Black community? I know that the funds are going through intermediary organizations, but equity remains an important issue. You don't have to provide a response right away, but I'm hoping you could provide numbers on the groups, the different groups targeted by province, and also the number of groups who did end up receiving money. This will let us look after equity in the funding distribution process. Thank you for the question. Do we have those numbers with us? Madame Chabot, we will have to get back to you with a response in writing. Thank you. My next question, I'm trying to understand, there $100 million were given in the budget 2021, $50 million in 2022. Are all those funds going towards the same thing? Are there 3 different programs or just the one? Because also this week we heard about we heard about the philanthropy, the Black-led Philanthropic Endowment Fund, which is seeking to set up sustainable long-term funding. Is this a separate fund from the initiative, which of course is coming to will be ending in 2024? Does this all support the same group? Is it through the Philanthropic Endowment Fund that we will ensure a long-term future? Thank you for the question. So I talked about 3 pillars that are all part of one program. Meanwhile, alongside the program, there is the fund that I brought up. So these are 2 programs that are complementary but distinct. Final question. When hearing for witnesses, 3 groups came before the committee. 3 of them were they were the intermediary groups, and I believe the program is winding down in March 2024. So in 2 years, we asked them what they thought of in terms of the future. Of course, it will be up to other governments to decide the long-term future. I understand that, but it's important for groups that progress and funding can continue. Is that anything? Is that something that will be included in the mechanisms that you're setting up? Thank you for the question. The question of the future of the program is something the government is still working on. I am sure that the voices of the community will be centered going forward. Thank you. Ms. Zarillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to follow on the topic that Madame Chabot was speaking on. And Ms. Charles, you had mentioned earlier about more to do. So my question is kind of around capacity and momentum. So this initiative has an expiration date. How can the government ensure that the capacity and the momentum that has already been built can move forward even after the expiration date of the program?
Thank you for the question. I would start by saying when we look at the unfunded report, we can see that the need is huge. So there's definitely, with that initiative, we have laid a good foundation, and with the collaboration of the intermediaries, we really wanted to create that foundation to build the ecosystem. So indeed, moving forward, as I heard other witnesses mention, government can continue to work with the community, listening to the community, and with them determine how we can build on that very important momentum that the initiative has created.
Thank you for that. And so I hear there's still more connections and more information to hear from the communities that have experienced using the fund. That goes to my next question. We heard some testimony about more connections needed in the West, in Western Canada. I'm from BC, and I know that although there may not be as many organizations, there's still lots of organizations in BC that would like to see some funding come the way. So how do we get British Columbia involved in this initiative?
Thank you for the question. And I would say at the outset, Mr. Chair, that the national coverage is something that's exceedingly important for this program. We have 4 intermediaries who are across the country, Edmonton to Halifax, and through that, seeking to ensure that there is a broad coverage across the country. Sandra, aimerais-tu parler?
Puis, I'm sorry. Just to add also that through our intermediary to the West, their mandate is really to cover the region. So it's collaboration, definitely paying attention to where our fund is distributed, identifying other regions that need attention, but it's definitely an opportunity that we can explore with our intermediaries.
Great. And just question on the intermediary, is there any potential to expand the number of intermediaries or to talk about how that gets transferred into the foundation or the endowment fund, sorry? Like, is there any talk about expanding that and making the network wider?
Sure, thank you for the question. So sort of 2 points there. So on the question of adding additional intermediaries, so initially the program started with 3 intermediaries, and then the 4th in the West was added after a little bit of time. And so I would say in future there could be potential for other high-capacity organizations to join as intermediaries. That remains to be determined and decided, but I think it is something that is in the range of possibilities. In terms of the endowment fund and how that is going to work, so once the foundation is selected to in effect like run the endowment to manage the funds, then that organization will be making granting decisions across the country. And so the call for proposals was quite clear about the need for regional representation, regional bodies, regional feedback to ensure that the broad range of communities across the country is heard and that the funding is accessible very broadly.
1 minute, okay. Ms. Hall, you mentioned earlier about operating funding, or actually you mentioned about hiring, that some of the funding was used to help organizations hire permanent staff instead of having to rely exclusively on volunteers. And I just wanted to ask, how can the federal government do more to support operating funding that really is needed to build capacity?
Thank you for the question. So as Katie mentioned earlier, there is an operational component that is included in the grants and contributions agreements, normally up to about 15%. And those funds can be used, for the administration of the program. Now, we have heard calls for more permanent operating funding. Generally, the funding model that's been taken more broadly on grants and contributions programs is that the funding is directed on a more project-specific basis rather than to fund the core operations of organizations. There are some exceptions, but in general, that's the approach that has been taken.
Madame Zerlo.
That's great. I saw that, some of the testimony we heard was that they would like a bigger percentage to go to operating, so you're saying that that's a possibility, so that's great. Thank you.
It's the time now to Madame Gladue for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I want to echo what Ms. Chabot had asked for in terms of the quantitative measures of success of the fund. If you could table those with the committee and include the baseline of where you started and then where we are today, so we can see. I think Ms. Charles had indicated that you were on track, and I just want to see what specifically quantitative measures that you have. There was a reporter from the CBC last year, Desmond Brown, who identified concerns that were being expressed from Black-led organizations that their funding applications were rejected because they didn't qualify. So I wanted to know, how does the department define Black-led organizations, and was there consultation with Black-led organizations and Black communities to establish the definition?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So there were concerns raised last year around the decision-making for this initiative. And the department listened carefully to the feedback that was received. And I think Katie can speak to us a little bit about what we heard and what we've learned and the changes that we've made.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I think you're referring to sort of the initial call for proposal that we had for the capital assistance, and that was the direct funding provided to organizations to improve, renovate their facilities. So that call was run in July 2020, and it was majorly oversubscribed. And at that time, the department realized with the oversubscription, following some engagement with stakeholders, that we had provided a bit of an administrative burden to organizations, requiring that they explain to us how they are Black-led or Black-focused. What we did then, we began to revisit all of those applications, and we reviewed all of them, over 1,700 that we received, and ended up funding 1,300, over 1,300. We also then led to a review of our internal systems to figure out and to improve the way that we manage our processes moving forward. 3 main areas were improved. So our application process was improved. We provided more clarity in our applicant guides to make sure it was clear for organizations to understand how to apply, but also what eligibility criteria we would be looking at. We also looked at improving our application form, moving to an attestation-based indication of being Black-led, self-identifying as Black-led, not being determined by the department. And then the third element that we did was a bit more client-centric, so doing a little bit more throughout a call for proposal, information sessions, for example, providing an opportunity for organizations to contact the department if they had questions, and then as well on the tail end, expanding the opportunities for organizations to come back with us for missing information. Typically, it's 10 days, and we expanded that to 15 days so that new organizations who aren't used to doing business with the government are able to allow a little bit more time.
Thank you for that. We did hear some testimony from some of the organizations that were smaller that said, they didn't have experience in applying to the government and they needed some help with that. We also heard, to Ms. Cirillo's point, that they were looking for more flexibility in terms of the operational funding. So, I think you said 15% is what's allowed, but if there's an ability to be flexible depending on the project, I think we heard about that. You talked about the 3 pillars: capacity building, systems change, and emerging gaps. So what are the emerging gaps that you see in the go forward?
Thank you for the question. So in identifying those gaps, we are relying on the voices of the community to hear from them the voices that they hear, the gaps that they see. And their voices are really central for us in terms of identifying those gaps. So one of the gaps we heard about was in Nova Scotia, related to the former Nova Scotia Home for Colored Children, which had fallen into disrepair, but is very important, though complex, certainly, site within the history of the Black community in Nova Scotia. And so some of that funding was used for the Akuma Foundation to renovate the home and to turn it into a hub for the community. Sandra and I visited over the summer, and it has become and will be, I think, a very effective and a very welcoming place for the community. And so we had heard from the community that was an important priority.
Now to Madame Martinez Floretta.
Merci. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have a few questions. You talked about data, how we can understand, because as my colleague, Ms. Chabot, was saying, this program wanted to address inequities, improve capacity building. Now, when it comes to data, are we looking at SMEs, like a neighborhood hairdresser? How is the program helping out these small entrepreneur-led entities that might not have the means to present the government with a whole business plan, and who suffer racial profiling quite frequently, including racial profiling by banks? How can funds support them? How can we help them? And how does the government assess risk? If a bank isn't willing to loan money, will the fund be able to loan money? I'm thinking of other countries in the world, and I'm also thinking of microcredits. How does risk assessment work? How can we boost the capacity of a population which has suffered under racial profiling in banks for a long time? Thank you for that question. I won't answer on behalf of businesses, because our program mostly works with nonprofits. I'll give you one example. There was a new organization, and it was having a lot of problems getting funding because, of course, it had never worked with a government or private institution before. The fund helped them. When it comes to nonprofits, we're not really thinking about risk. We're thinking more about potential, community needs, the communities being serviced. What we saw is that one organization was able to launch. It had a program of its own. It had objectives of its own. We helped it set up a governance structure, set out a strategic plan. This led to the creation of a new business with supported by initiative funds. And that business, it was a startup, was able to serve the community. So thanks to our investment, 12 startups, in fact, were able to receive funds instead of 5, which were the initial plans. We don't work directly with businesses, but we do work with organizations who support the Black community. Thank you. What's the difference between Quebec and the other provinces? You spoke about 2 different programs. I think there's a longer deadline in Quebec. Could you go over the differences between Quebec and the other provinces? I can't get into that, but I'd be happy to provide a written response. Earlier, you were talking about how to take the funding and make it permanent so as to better support and better strengthen organizations. But in order to make funding permanent, you have to take demand into account. And there are people in my riding who aren't aware that the fund even exists. What mechanisms exist to get the information out into the world so that people know there is funding available?
We are leveraging our national funders to help us promote some of the initiatives of the Supporting Black Canadian Communities. We're also doing more, as I mentioned, to try to do information sessions and promote when call for proposals are open. Also availing applicants of a contact in the department that they can ask questions. So we're trying to make sure that we are making those connections in communities and then offering opportunities to promote those call for proposals and opportunities for additional funding.
Very quickly, it might also be a good idea to work with organizations possibly outside the Black community in order to publicize the fund, because, again, there were some organizations who were not aware the funds exist.
Madame Martinez-Ferreira, Madame Chabot, pendant...
Ms. Chabot, 2.5 minutes. Thank you. It'll be more of a comment. I'd like to go a little farther. We're talking about initiatives and the new endowment fund. Even for us, I don't have a great understanding of the program, so it might be better to have some ambassadors who could publicize the programs. I suppose that's what the intermediaries are doing. But of course, intermediaries were chosen for a specific purpose because they had high capacity. There's a whole variety of nonprofits. They're all looking for funding for their own purposes, which makes sense. But if we're looking at other priorities in the future, there really needs to be an awareness mechanism set up to publicize information about the program. This is an important program, and it ought to be known more widely. Now, I have a question. There are many criteria that need to be met for an organization to be eligible for funding. Has there ever been an assessment of needs? I know objectives were set out, but what are the greatest needs of organizations on the ground? Do they need capacity building? Or could it be something different? Do they need something else to support the community? I don't know if I was entirely clear. What are the needs that you are hearing from when you speak with different groups? Thank you for that question. The initiative was launched in 2019, and it started with discussions with the community. We learned a lot throughout the discussions. Sandra, would you be able to summarize the discussions? Happily. Through our discussions with the community, we heard that the needs are great. This is all the more true because there's not just financial issues, but also issues of social inclusion and anti-racism. Communities are saying more or less what you heard during witness testimony. There needs to be increased partnership, network creation, and the creation of an ecosystem that could be beneficial throughout Canada. We also heard a great deal about operating budgets. But we did also hear about the desire to expand programs. All sorts of organizations offer important programs, be they related to food security, education, newcomers. So there was great interest in frontline workers. Ms. Chabot, Ms. Charles, thank you.
Madame Cirillo for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we heard again today that the need is great. I wanted to just revisit something that Ms. Alexander said around the eight-month window for grants to get out the door. So my question, I have two questions. The first one is, how can the government speed up the disbursement of these grants, or can they at least say that a project has been approved in a more timely manner so that they can plan for that 8-month window? And then the second question is, how will Employment and Social Development Canada be using the unspent funds that were allocated in 21-22?
So I could start to answer your first question. Thank you. So I think what we're learning from a lot of these call for proposals is the need to be more transparent with how long some of these processes take. So we do, in the publishing of our applicant material, try to manage expectations about when the funding will be approved and when we expect that projects will begin. So from the start, we're really trying to change and be a little bit more client-centric, making sure that we're managing expectations as an applicant applies to the program. And when there are delays, which do happen at times, we're also proactive in making sure that we do contact applicants. If we're expecting a delay that is out of the ordinary, we are making measures to contact applicants to let them know that timelines will be adjusted.
Ms. Hall, just on that question about the unspent funds that were allocated in 2021 and 2022.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll just ask for clarification. Or, like, Budget 2022 allocated funding for this fiscal year and next fiscal year. So I would just say that planning is underway to ensure that that funding is able to be spent in this fiscal year and next fiscal year.
And I guess it's anticipated that it will all get spent just because there's so many requests?
The intention would be to fully disperse the funding. We know that the needs are high, and the calls that the intermediaries held were oversubscribed. We know that there is demand, and so work is underway to determine the way forward there, and I anticipate there'll be more information available in due course.
Great. Okay.
Madame Zarillo, but to conclude the first hour, and this is our last with witnesses, I'm going to go to the official opposition for roughly 2.5 minutes, and then to the government side for 2.5 minutes. That's agreeable to the committee. Seeing agreement, Madame Gladue, I take it you're taking that section.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to confirm for my partner here that the range of funding, remember you had the average and he wanted the range of funding, that you'll table that for the committee? Perfect. And to let you know that we did hear testimony that the intermediary, the use of an intermediary that is familiar with the communities is a really good deal. That they think that that is helping to make sure that the funding opportunities are identified and people can get a little bit of help applying to the fund. Now, one of the pillars you talked about was systems change. So we had heard the need for, the targeted funding, education, a bunch of different initiatives and incentives to address the systemic discrimination that goes on. What kind of systems change is being done as part of that pillar?
Thank you for the question. So I can speak to a couple of initiatives, and then I'll turn to Sandra for a little bit more. So included in that pillar are 2 initiatives that are underway. So the first one is the External Reference Group, which is intended to be a long-term advisory body that will provide advice to the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, and that will be an ongoing source of insight, advice and reflection for the department going forward. In terms of designing programming, funding processes, and really any other matter that touches in those areas. And so a call for applications has been put out. The selection is underway, and more information will be available in due course on the group. The second initiative is the National Institute for People of African Descent, and the intention there is to provide funding for an independent institute that will serve a similar function more broadly. And so the institute would be able to provide advice, undertake research, procure information, and provide an external source of insight and advice for government, but also more broadly in a more, again, a permanent fashion as an institute in and of itself.
Your time, Madame Gladue. We'll now go to the government side. Is it Mr. Coteau or Mr. Long?
Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you so much. Over the last couple of years, as the program has built itself and there's been more recipients, have you noticed as a department some emerging trends where other needs that may not be part of the initial 3 pillars are emerging, things that are presenting themselves that you're thinking about as a department?
Thank you for the question. So certainly as the initiative has rolled out, we have greatly benefited from the connections and the insights that have been provided by the intermediaries, but also through our contacts with the organizations. And so things like Katie has spoken of in terms of our internal processes and a more client-centric approach have been very helpful. More broadly, in terms of our programming, I would highlight that there is the Investment Readiness Program, which is part of the Social Innovation Social Finance Fund, which also falls within our branch as officials. And included in that program is a $1.5 million set of funding that's specifically administered by the Foundation for Black Communities for Black organizations, for social purpose organizations, to help them with their readiness to participate in social finance and that broader ecosystem. And the needs there were brought home to us through the work that we've done through SBCCI. So we are seeing those broader impacts, yes.
Have you done any type of analysis of pre-existing programs that Black-led organizations may have applied to see if there's been a decrease in funding on more long-term permanent funding sources versus the newer initiatives like that? So has there been any analysis on intake outside of these programs that are specifically designed for Black-led organizations in regards to an increase or decrease in other programs?
The question. I think as the program is still in its early days and we are beginning to see meaningful results, we have not yet seen or taken the opportunity to do that sort of research. Going into the future, I think those impacts will begin to become evident, and we'll have more data there.
Yeah, what we've seen in in other jurisdictions, when specialized programs sometimes are created, you start to see a push internally to push organizations specifically to that program, and sometimes it can have the reversal effect of taking away the ability for organizations to tap into the more traditional long-term funding lines that existed. So it's a nice thing to if you are collecting data to be aware of and to be conscious of in order to ensure that you don't have a collapse of interest on outside of these specific programs as well. These programs should be complements to larger funding lines as well. That's more of a comment than a question.
Thank you,
thank
Mr.
you very much,
Coteau.
Mr. Chair. I'm finished.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Coteau.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just a quick response on that. So thank you for the comment and the feedback. And just the programs are absolutely intended to be additional to existing programming, but that is something that we will be watching for in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, thank you, Mr. Coteau. Thank you to the witnesses for appearing from the department today and providing these answers. This concludes the first hour. And before, I'm going to suspend while we come back in. Madame Zarrillo, were you signaling me, or when we start again?
Mr. Chair, I had a motion that I wanted to bring to the floor. Do you want me to bring it after we
Yes.
come back from suspension?
Please.
Okay.
After I will recognize
Thank you.
when we resume. I would remind those members that are appearing virtually, you have to log off and then log back in again to go to the second hour. So we'll suspend for a few minutes while the witnesses are leaving and the members log out and log back. So anybody want a help break? We'll get about 4 minutes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Sorry, Mr. Chair. But we're coming back into a closed meeting.
Pardon?
So I needed to do my motion in the open meeting.
She can do it in a second. Yeah. I'll recognize you when we start. Pardon? No.
you.